All right, let's jump straight into it. It's 10 past 11 on 1st of April, so we've got the new month. Here we go. All right, so pretty interesting sort of session to sort of kick the week off and that. Aussie finally got that breakdown and that. This is something I've been tracking. If you've been watching the last couple of sort of analysis that I've been doing, this is the move I've been waiting for, and I did okay on it, kind of bungled it a little bit. I'd been waiting, and this little kick up here, as it came down here, that's fine, had some weight on it, this was good. This little move back up over here ultimately took out about two-thirds of my position. Oh, I was frustrated because obviously this is the move that we were looking for. Sort of coming down underwards, so afterwards and under that level afterwards the of the break. So the second move down here ultimately was the one. So I did okay. I did make some sort of return on it, of course, but I had a fairly chunky sized position on this, based on this being quite a high sort of confidence trade. As we can see, just to sort of recap it a little bit, but like as I said, it was coming in with a nice range through here, defined line through this sort of 80 zone, and these little bounces coming in just a little bit lower each time. And that's what I say. It's kind of like, if you imagine like a ball, it's like bounce, 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 and then drops off the edge of the table. That's a good sort of basically way to sort of call it with these sort of things, and that's exactly what we were seeing. Had a nice defined line. What got me is that I said that this line down here, these supports here, I didn't think this would play a great deal. And I think this is something that I got to sort of really mark down and sort of go, okay, yeah, it did, because we got the drop down early. That was fine. It was in a good position, moved up, moved the stops, and it came up here and clipped out a bunch of them and then sort of moved down. So this did play a role. Ooh, that is a loud, that's a loud alert going off in my ear. It did play its part, but ultimately just as a little screw you to positions like myself, early positions, and then bang as it went down there. So live and learn. Has come down into this first buy zone, and as you can see, it kind of overshot it down a little bit, so down into the 20s, bounce back up, but ultimately it's kind of really holding and consolidating along here. What's important about this is really this kind of rising support that's coming up through here. You can't see it so much on this. So I'll say, I gotta think, why do I have it actually coming down on these parts here? There's got to be a reason why I've marked it with this. Maybe a weekly? I don't know. Why have I got this? Okay, I think what I may have sort of potentially been trying to do with this is sort of make this out to be some sort of flag. So this kind of come from no man's land. So I'm not a big fan of that actually ultimately. But as you can see, this is the angle that we're matching up on the higher. Let's put it back onto something we can actually trade and work with. This is matching up with these highs over here, and now I've just sort of tried to replicate this basically as best you can. Sort of down the bottom side here to give us a bit of an idea. It's also coming through a horizontal that we've sort of seen previously around this sort of 62.30. This is why I had this first buy zone here, but look, ultimately I wouldn't mind, as I said, now that I actually sort of re-look at these things, this is the where I'd like to be getting a bit of a sort of position on from down at 62. I think these sort of lows down here will provide a good level to sort of like snap out people that haven't held it through here, and then potentially we could see a larger. That's the kind of move, a bit of over exaggerated sort of arrow. But the point is, it's sort of like down here. I wouldn't mind sort of actually sort of having a bit more of a stab. So I'm not going to really jump in at this point. I think I'll probably look for this maybe to sort of roll over. We've got RBH coming out today. I think it's pretty much sort of set in stone that they're going to be holding. I know I saw, yeah, I mean, you always see a couple of these things where, um, this economist that picked this one time, he did this thing, he's predicted that they're going to cut again. And look, maybe he's right. Nothing's ever fully set in stone. And when everybody's 100% in one direction, it creates a very good sort of buy opportunity, sell opportunity in the opposite direction, of course, because the payoff can be quite big if they do shock the market. And a lot of the time, they actually sort of come as they expect them to. Um, I mean, of all the sort of data points, these are probably the ones that they actually do get right most of the time. But obviously, the shocks, is where it's actually you see those explosive kind of moves. So look, I'll be monitoring Aussie to sort of see what we do through here. But what I've sort of found with these things, particularly like you've worked so hard to get through these things. So I'm so disappointed with myself in this trade because it works so hard to get through here. I'm an in-out trader. I think anybody that knows anything about what I do knows that I do that. The cross that I bear is that I don't hold these things. This one I had a chunky position on. Yeah, we're talking five figures at least through this period here, and it really just, oh, yeah, it was a little bit frustrating to say the least. Anyway, look, regardless of that, let's sort of crack on with what we can do here. So, look, should we sort of get back above these wicks here, we could see a little bit of a squeeze up. But I think, again, you've done so much work to get through this level, it's going to be very tough to get back past it. Coming up through here, you've got this little horizontal, which, as I said, it's not a major level. As you can see, it only tapped it once and then, excuse me, cut through it, but it will play some sort of reaction on top side here. And as we know, sort of 60s always seems to come up as a reoccurring sort of figure. 60s and 90s, I find with Aussie is always a good sort of point of profit taking or support resistance and that, depending on the direction you're coming in. So we'll see what happens with the RBA today. As I said, expected is the hold, which depending on sort of how things are going. I mean, everything's a bit up in the air at the moment. But how things are going, it can be sort of seen as a little bit more of a sort of a hawkish kind of move. But of course, because the market's expecting it, you're not really going to see this kind of thing. It's not really sort of so much hawkish, it's just not dovish. But the press conference and that is expected to have a bit more of a sort of dovish tone. And if we hear that, if we hear them sort of saying that sort of like, we're holding rates today, but we understand the pressures and, things are sort of we're happy to sort of move should the stuff line up accordingly. If they're talking about this sort of more, we're happy to sort of do what needs to be done, but no, not so much do what needs to be done in a sort of hawkish tone, but do what needs to be done in terms of should the economic data support it, we're happy to sort of consider cuts coming through over the next couple of meetings. That kind of sort of wording and that kind of tone is really going to keep pressure on Aussie because, of course, ultimately the market likes to hear more rates higher for strength in a currency in that. So obviously the alternative of this is if they're going to be sort of reducing rates, you're going to see a weaker side of it all. Now, sort of with this kind of stuff with the data and that, sort of speaking to a few people and like, I mean, the news and the data and how markets react and that sort of a lot of people sort of think that it's a bit phony with it all, but this is what moves the market. And I think sort of understanding how the market will react in terms of what data is presented to it is the key. Well, at least for me, it is in the way that I sort of trade. These bits of data come out so quickly and so often that, they're chopping and changing. But I mean, look at the charts. Of course, you know what I mean? This is what gives us our volatility. This is what gives us basically how we can sort of like trade these things, particularly in the sort of in-out sort of short-term kind of sort of stuff. So look, it's interesting to sort of see where we go here. It obviously is down into the support area. Markets obviously sort of taking their profit. They're sort of holding it here, consolidating around here. Probably not expecting a great deal prior to so just having a quick look at a couple of the metals in China. Having a quick, probably not expecting a great deal in that sort of prior to the RBA and that today. So a little bit sort of quieter on it all. We are seeing, so I've just flicked off there for a second, seeing one sort of retest and sort of reject from its previous supports. So again, if we sort of look at these sort of things, as the yuan's coming down, that's kind of giving Aussie a little bit of a sort of a push up. DXY, we did see that rally overnight. It is pushing down on open this morning, but I have a feeling that this might push up a little bit here. So I'm going to give that one a negative on USD, make it a little bit bigger because you're more significant. And then we got RBA coming out today, and I think that's going to be a little bit dovish. So this is kind of just a little sort of three-tick analysis on this sort of thing for Aussie, but I think ultimately in that we're probably going to be seeing a little bit of pressure maintained on Aussie down here. We've broken some technical levels. I think price needs to respect that for a little bit. It means basically we could I'm looking for some sort of consolidation around this sort of low 62s. Maybe a little dip down into that 62 test, and then ultimately look for a little bit of a move back up. But I think we may sort of have a little bit of trouble sort of getting out of this area in the short term. I don't think this will be a sort of a little shakedown push up through here. As I said, look, it could, in terms of this sort of kind of wider kind of thing coming through here. It's not perfect, of course, with it all, but it's reasonable for it all. But I think sort of certainly, you've got some nice levels that you can call that the market's definitely reacting off, and that one of them is this sort of falling resistance. So now we've got this as a bit of a confluence up the top over here. So any sort of move up to say around that sort of 62.80 level, definitely going to see a reaction. There's a lot of people that are buying this. A lot of people that are buying this. They were defending it. They were getting 50s, 40s, 30-point bounces off this. There's a lot of people that didn't necessarily exit on this position here. There probably was a fair few that got out. That's what sort of snapped me out a little bit. But the point is, because it was so tough to get through here, it's going to be tough to get back through. And so really, this is your kind of danger zone in terms of sort of, well, danger, but like, it's going to provide quite a heavy roof for price to get through. So I don't think this is going to be a snapback recovery to be going out through here. I think there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, needs to be lined up to sort of get this thing moving. It's not really sort of responding with a lot of stuff happening. I mean, equity markets had an okay night overnight, so they bounced back a little bit. Copper's coming off a little bit, one strengthening. US dollar selling down had not really had much of an effect on sort of positive moves for the Aussie. So it's not just the Aussie market, like Aussie dollar, you need a lot of other things to be sort of going its way to get some confidence back in the Aussie dollar at the moment. But for now, it's certainly looking a little bit on the weaker side. I'll track this up through here. Give us some sort of potential little move that we could be looking for through here. All right, moving on. So we got gold, which just keeps going strength to strength to strength. This thing is just in absolute beast mode in that. Let's get onto a bit of a cleaner chart. So this one here. So what I was looking for over the weekend was this like move up and then potentially some sort of come back down over here. It kind of did, but not really. Like, I mean, it did have this little shakedown on US Open and that, but as you can see, just like every other time here, it's been bought up so quickly. Like they just sort of shake it down, move it back up. What I do sort of take away from this potentially is that this could be around about the sort of hanging man status. I mean, it doesn't look like it on this daily candle here at all. But, these kind of sell downs and then push back up can be early indicators of basically the market sort of taking profit quite quickly here. Yes, they snapped it up to push it back on. Look, this could just go bang and sort of rocket up another couple of levels and that. But you are in this sort of overshoot area. It is absolutely screaming hot. Look, the RSI is rolling over a little bit. This is on the 4 hour. Look, it's tough to be sort of calling tops on these things. I did put out a post yesterday on X showing the percentage moves over 1,000, 2,000, and obviously we're now trying to sort of see where 3,000 goes to. But sort of 1,000, it went above like 2 or 3% or so. So let's see if I can find this one sec. Where are we? That's probably just easier if I flick it back to these periods where it was on the other chart, wasn't it? There we go, this one. So if we zoom right back down to back in history, we see this, have a look through here. So this was when we first went past 2000, was it? No, sorry, it must be back a little bit further. Here we go. So first time past 2000. So this is the line on 2000. You can see that price, not this one here, went past 3.79%. There's 2000, first time past it, 3.79%. Subsequent kind of little sessions, we did see quite a steep sort of sell-off. Sort of came down about 10%. Now, this is not sort of saying that, hey, look, this is what's going to happen necessarily. It's just sort of pointing out that, this is what's happened previously when it's gone, first time it went through a big, significant round number like 2000. 3.79, and then, a couple of sessions later came down 10%. First time it went through 1,000, similar kind of numbers. So first time through 1,000, went up 3.23%, pulled back 12%. And the reason I'm talking percent is because it's all relative to it all. You know, if it pulled back 120 bucks, I mean, that's still a big, a massive pullback. But, you know, obviously 120 bucks when you're at 1,000 is 12% here. You know, if you're doing that when you're up at 3,000, you know, it's about 3 or 4%, which is, again, look, it's a big pullback, but it's not the same significant levels that we are sort of seeing, potentially sort of lining up. And so if we go all the way up here to where we are right now, this is where it would, given these numbers, sort of take you to. So far, where we are, whoops, not this one here, that's 3.79%. At the moment, we're 4% above it. You know, if we take 10%, the lower of those two back there, that takes you down $300 to get 10%. You know, again, I'm not sort of saying that this thing will happen like this. It's just something to be kind of aware of, in the sense of, you know, there was all those times going through 1,000 and 2,000, market was obviously thinking, wow, what is going to stop this thing? It is just running like crazy. And that's exactly what we've been seeing here. I mean, look at this move just from this year. This is moving from down here. Is this down? This year, December. Jesus, wow. It's up 20%, 21% give and take on the year. Like that's just insane. So look, this thing could go up here. It could go up to 285, go to 280. Like, you know, you're going into sort of all-time high. So there's no real sort of set thing to sort of say where it should pull back from. But the point is, it's just that this is just an interesting thing that I found that I was looking at when it went through 1,000 and 2,000. You did see some pretty steep sort of corrections afterwards. I mean, we saw some steep pullbacks in that through, I think it was this October. I mean, this correction through here was crazy. This came down 8%, and this is on a daily here, so over a 2-week period. So, you know, these things can sort of correct on the dime quite quickly. Once we start to sort of see some things lining up, we've got whatever it's called, Liberation Day or something kind of thing happening over in the US. You know, all these tariff things sort of coming forward. These could be the catalysts to see a little bit of a sort of pullback with stuff. I mean, it is screaming hot up here. These angles are just straight up. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually at some stage we do get a sharp correction. And what you look for these things, as I said, are these sort of little shorter ones and that sort of these little things where, get back onto the other chart we were using, these little sort of sell-off points here can be generally like a little indication, bounce back up. If this happens again, it just gives us a nice little level that if we drag down underneath this, and put a little alert under there, underneath sell down work. See if I've got any alerts left. Run out of alerts every now and then. But certainly, I think back down underneath 3,100, I think you could see a little bit of a start of a deeper sort of correction. So certainly, look, this thing is ultimately in beast mode at that. So, I mean, holding out for some sort of, as I said, 10% correction seems a bit crazy. But we are sort of seeing this thing sort of at least sort of consolidate around this period here. Look, if this thing sort of just goes bang and then shoots up through here, well, okay, we reevaluate this, we go on to another leg up over here. But again, if we sort of stand right back, this thing's just breaking all levels. So, technicals kind of go out the window a little bit, but at the same time, this is what we've been sort of tracking for a long time to sort of see this thing come up around and take out this sort of like high, top end of this channel. And it has, for the most part, been respecting this thing pretty well all the way through. So should you see some sort of correction over here, let's update this yet again. Look, 23% takes you down to 3,000. 38, 29, 21. These are obviously $200 for, at this point, $200 retracement. But what I keep sort of stressing, you've got to take these things in context of how big the price is at the moment and how big this last move has been, because this move here is just tracking basically from December. So this little breakout, last time that we touched kind of the bottom of this trend and bounced up over here. So 38% is, still a bullish continuation to sort of come back down here and then sort of potentially sort of move along like this. I mean, as I say that, Getting some alerts going off that we're sort of taking out 25. Um, but the point is, it's sort of like, if this thing does correct, you know what I mean? It can come back a fair chunk and still maintain this channel, bullish momentum, come back inside, take us a little bit of overshoot. It's something to keep in mind in that, because the idea that this thing will keep going forever, well, I mean, nothing goes forever. There'll be a point where they go, okay, this is a little bit crazy and there's profit to be made. There's other markets to put some money into, and that's what they'll do. You'll see the flows come out of gold and it'll go into, say, equities going back up to the highs. You'll see US dollar running again. These kind of things. Like, although the picture is so grim for US dollar, and I'm team 101 for the US dollar, I do believe there's some room to squeeze out some of the market, have this cool off a little bit, put the flows temporarily into something else, maybe into equities, maybe into US dollar, while this thing cools off, and then they re-attack it from this point down here and then move up. I mean, 38% is still bullish momentum, and this is, remember, 38% of this move. Not, not to sort of mention if you'd actually sort of gone from down here. I mean, a 23% correction of this entire move kind of almost still takes you into towards the channel. Maybe a little bit of an overcorrection this way, overcorrection that way. Now this is getting a little bit sort of, even I don't believe this is going to happen, but these things can happen. And that's 23% pullback of this. Overshoot over here, overshoot down here, and on it goes. These are sort of potential sort of things, and we'll see how we go. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't be banking the house on this kind of thing happening at this stage. But there will be a point, is what I'm getting towards, that, the market will value this thing and say, hey, look, you know what? This is a little bit over the top at the moment. There's better returns, even if it's in a sort of medium term, to sort of better returns in other markets. I mean, gold can't keep going forever. Famous last words, it'll be 3,500 next month. We'll see how we go there. All right, flip along, we've got silver. As I said, silver's sort of lacking a little bit. This had been the sort of the trade over here 2 weeks ago now, or so, back at 32.70. That'll be the buy. It was late Friday night, didn't take it. That's great, whatever. Look, what we've seen more subsequent from there is there's obviously a little flag, measured move, and this measured move worked out perfectly. And this is the point of these measured moves. So, I've got a mate that's sort of trading. He's like just getting into doing like the head and shoulders and all this. And I'm like, you got to have your sort of targets on these things. You got to have a measured move. You got to know, okay, seeing a head and shoulders or seeing a flag, that's great. That's the technical setup. What does it mean? What's that story telling you? What are the buyers doing? What are the sellers doing? And if that does play out, where is most likely you're going to see the profits being taken? And obviously, as we saw this, it was a perfect little price target, measured move of this flag, came out here. It retested these October highs that we had, clipped that, and then market said, yep, that's enough for us right now. And bang, we're seeing sell down, bang, we're seeing sell down. So yesterday it was really ping pong balling around. If we go into a lower time frame, you can see this here. This is the range we were looking for, sort of through the weekend. And obviously sort of, tested the top, tested the bottom, shot out the top, shot out the bottom. It is absolutely all over the shop at the moment. So let's see if we can make anything of this sort of stuff. Like, I'm not a big fan of things on this kind of angle, but this may give us some sort of little kind of channel. Obviously a bit of an overshoot down here. Really came back down, tested here. So we could see that the buyers are holding it in this level over here. And once again, they snapped it straight back up into here. This is going to be a crucial level. This is the level here now. Should this thing sort of shoot back down, I'll get onto gold silver ratio at the moment, because that's actually breaking out, or very close to sort of breaking out. It's testing channel resistance. Should that thing break out, I think you're probably looking at a sort of another test of 33.50, and 33.50 is where they need to hold it. It is sort of very bullish. I mean, overall, deep pullback and then shoots back up here again. But it doesn't mean that you can't see some like dribble down corrections of it all. Price target was hit. Markets, these sell downs are being quite strong. Oops. I mean, these kind of like sell downs here, yes, it grinds back up, but then sellers, when they sell it, they're really sort of snapping it down. So look, back into the range, overshoot one, overshoot two, back into this range again. I'm going to re-put this here and re-put this here. I think this is still the direction that we're going to see. 34.20, I think if you can get above that, if you've got this little falling resistance to sort of try and deal with on the top side, but I don't know if that'll really hold too much in that. I'm not a big fan of this kind of thing through here. Yes, you got two connections here. Yes, you got a vague sort of bottom side here, but I think sort of really this little range is what I'm kind of looking at for direction. Should you break out the top side here, you probably see gold silver ratio hold its resistance and sort of come back into its range that it's been in for 3 months. Should we break out the bottom side here, I think this is probably going to be when you're sort of seeing that gold silver ratio break through 92. And I've got a sort of move target on that up to around 95. So we could see that sort of continue a little bit. But I think certainly this is the level you want to see what the market does with it. It needs to hold this level here. Should it not hold here, I think, whoops, not that one, this one. I think that's kind of the move. You could see this thing coming back down and probably sort of coming back down to sort of test 33. So this is an area that I'm interested in. Top side, look, you're running into a whole heap of resistance here. Yes, this one sort of was from October. It was just a one little touch and bang, they sold it off. Even if you get above that, 34.80, which is ultimately the sort of multi-year highs, that's going to be a big resistance there as well. So I think the upside in the short term is probably capped a little bit. Doesn't mean that it can't sort of come up here and then sell down, but I just don't see it going through 34.80 in the short term. We'll see how that goes though. Move along. So we've got DXY. I'll cover this one. So bear with us 1 second. So it's this sort of thing. I put a chart up before. I'm like, have I covered this on the video? No. So look, 34, sort of 104.20 is where I was watching over the weekend as per this sort of analysis. This was an area in which I thought the market was going to target. Yes, it pulled down here and then sort of shot back up. I was actually tracking this thing on a low time frame, but you can see that this sell down here, a couple of takeaways from this. It had a nice little channel that it started to respect coming down on the bottom side here, broke out, retest, bang, and then this little move here, that little touch again of the resistance, bang, and then move up. That's what was the signal to sort of say, hey, look, this is going to go a little bit higher. And ultimately it came up and tested that 104.20. So get it back on a time frame that we can work with, at least 1 hour. So what we've seen here is the 61% retracement. The 61% retracement of this bounce move. Now, I've said a couple of times with DXY that this thing, when it squeezes, it does this kind of stuff. It looks like it's about to die, deep pullback, and then boom, springboards back up. So this isn't a super significant sort of level. I suppose you could see that it was a little bit resistance through here. A little bit, it was more, this is probably more relevant. This is why I've marked it and only marked it from this point here. This was its little sort of push up along the way through here. But obviously you can see how much effort it took to get through here, danced around this line a little bit, tried to hold it, gave it up, bang, and then shot back up. So where it's at the moment is really, you got to see, is this move here going to continue? It found resistance with this falling resistance. It came up and tested this 104, unable to close above it. So obviously, yeah, it went down first, came back up, but ultimately the two things that we saw, one, it hit this falling resistance and it came back and it's tested that 104.20. Question now is, does it go above there? So I'm going to put a little alert here if I've got any alerts left. So not high on squeeze, higher on bounce. Let's call that one. High on bounce there. It's pulling back. Let's see if this thing can find what it needs and shoots up over here. Still got little levels to get above. This is kind of your level you want to see it above now. Or is this going to just ultimately play out like this? 104.20 and bang, back down here. So really, at the moment, you could be coming back down to the 61% retracement on the bottom side here. You could potentially see something back if it wants to try to recapture and hold this level here. So they're the two downside targets that you'd be looking for. But ultimately, I think this has got some squeeze potential in it. I think this is the kind of stuff that I've always sort of seen with DXY, where it looks like it's rolling over, everyone's calling it. The US, the 10-year yields and that gapped down yesterday. They dropped like a stone the day before, but if you have a quick look at them, they actually sort of held support. So I don't track this thing on a daily, but if you have a flick back through it all, it held support exactly kind of where I'd had this thing marked. And I had this level marked for a long time. Like, as I said, I don't track it all the time, but it did look a bit like a bear flag, but it came down here, came back up and closed that gap. Yes, it sold back down almost immediately, but the point is this is a crucial line for it here. So should this sort of get down underneath those lows, okay, fine. US dollar, DXY, bang, it's going down. But as it is right now, it's on a support zone. It's bounced. It's done what it needed to do. It's holding it as of right now. So above here, you move up, or sort of below here, we sort of see a move. Whoops, we see a move down. That's kind of your zone for it at the moment. So I'll pull for what it's worth. Let's put a little breakout box on that. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So I'm not counting this thing out exactly quite yet. But how it's relevant is that if we flick back to DXY, we'll see this thing probably replicated. So should that break out the bottom side, we'll be moving back down towards these 61 tests and a lower low there, continuation of this sell down. You're looking back to sort of target this big 103, and this is a major, major level. So we're going to see a lot of stuff break should this thing go through here. The alternative side to this, or the flip side to this, is that this, as I said, sort of continues and gears up here a little bit more, tests these levels, and actually pushes back up towards that 104.90, 105 sort of levels. You know what I mean? I don't think this is okay. We've seen the bottom, and I don't think we're going to be seeing a 3-month run like we've seen previously with these things. But there is opportunity here to sort of really sort of catch a couple of people out, because so many people are looking at the yield, so many people are looking at these things and saying, yep, it's done, it's done, it's done. And this is what I've said about DXY. It looks like it's done, and then it jams back up into life and that. So we'll see how this goes. If it takes out this high over here, I don't think it's just going to be a high and then sell back down. I think we're going to see a bit of a continue. If we take out these highs, I think we're going to see a new high in this move here. So out of here, at least above 104.70. All right, and flip across, we got copper. So copper's continuing to kind of sell down a little bit here. So this is what I said the other day when we were sort of looking at these capitulation moves. Very much, these are the kind of things that you expect after, and I said this at the time, that big capitulation move, this moved in like 5 minutes or whatever, and it moved like 2.5% and then got smashed back into. That was liquidating stops. It was above an all-time high. It was actually already above an all-time high, but they were searching to find that pool of liquidity up over here and smash all those stops. Okay, now we can take it out. Boom, 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 boom. And you look at the subsequent move afterwards. And this is what I'm saying. These things, like, I mean, this has already pulled back 7% so far at its lowest point. This is 7% in what, 3 sessions or so, 3-4 sessions. It is incredibly bullish. It's still bullish, but the pullbacks can come hard and fast. And that's the thing. When people are taking profit, and you've really, because this thing, remember, look, this thing moved 34% since the start of the year. It doesn't take much to come back. I mean, that's 7%. That's a big big move in terms of actual points moved just like this through here. Does it mean it's not bullish? Of course not. It's still incredibly bullish. But the pullback, because of the thing has moved so much, it can come and quite a sort of substantial sort of percentage move to pull back as well. And this is kind of what I was alluding to with gold as well. That it may sort of seem like super bullish, and maybe it will sort of just keep continuing. But the thing is, these things can correct, and because they've moved so much, a percentage of 7%, looks like a blip compared to what it has moved overall. So yeah, certainly some downside potential. But look, this last sort of move up through here, I am still tracking and still sort of thinking that we might still have a little bit more to go. This is on the daily. We've got the RSI still pointing down. It looks great in the sense that it sort of found some buys here at the 50%. But I think it's still got a little bit of a dribble down and then a little bit of an overshoot at the 61%. If we get back down to that 488 level, that's where I'm keen to sort of have a stab at this. I think we've got a great sort of risk reward to get this move here. And remember, it's the same thing that I say every time. We go up, we find resistance, we come back, we find support. Support will be generally at a previous level of resistance. So it's a good idea structurally to get in here. And then this move will come. This move may go here. And we may get a lower high. and then you may get a sell down like this. That's fine. But you've got the option here: lower high, double top, high high continuation. This is the time to sort of get on top because this leg will come. It won't necessarily come from this level here. This is just where, based on sort of my approach that I'm going to be having a stab at it, this could come from down here. But the point is this structure will happen. We will get this leg here. So you've just got a better chance of buying it from down here to get a decent size move through this period. Cool. And finally, just finish off with China. So this thing came right up into that sell zone that I've been sort of tracking. We sold down, consolidated under the lows, and then sold down again. So this thing is obviously sort of like holding it, grind, down, boom, boom. This pair is not really known for fake outs so much. It is a more managed kind of sort of pair. Like it's not really sort of like that's why it just grinds and grinds and grinds because it's more managed. It's not really sort of something which you get sort of absolute freakouts and things to sell. It does get some faster moves like this kind of stuff down here, but ultimately it's really just more of a grind, grind, grind kind of thing. So interesting to see if this does push up through here and this gets back up into this range. If this gets back up into this range, then we could potentially see this as a shakeout and move to the top side here. But I think ultimately you're probably just dealing more with a range around here. I'm starting to think that this may be the top for it at the moment. But it doesn't mean that it can't just grind sideways here for a while. I think sort of should it come back down, look, if you see this, it bounced exactly kind of where we had that zone from previously. So again, these things are always important just to sort of keep on the chart because you've seen it come down here, it's found support, bound up here. At the moment, it's in retest mode. Down, find support, bang, find resistance, resistance at the previous support level. We should expect to probably move down here to see if this will sort of hold for a second effort down here. This moving down will be partly as well sort of why we're seeing sort of gold sort of ripping up a little higher. It does like a stronger yuan, weaker US dollar, but at the same time as well with Aussie. Should this thing start to sort of move down, we see a bit of a strengthening of yuan, then we could see Aussie recover up a little bit. While this thing is still in this mode here, and ultimately above 722, I think pressure is still going to remain on Aussie in the short term. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. Gold silver ratio, just to sort of finish this thing off, we're seeing this is actually I think it's multi-year highs, and I mean technically it's a high for since Feb 25 there, but if you drag this all the way back here, we're going back to September 22 that we've actually seen the gold silver ratio at this level. Main sort of thing with gold silver ratio is this channel it's been in. It's been in this channel for 3 months now. If we can find out where we are. We can see in this channel here, this is something that I called last week, and I said, look, this is something to be aware of because, negative divergence, that's my bread and butter. And this is one that we sort of saw happen beautifully, and this is a great sort of technical on this. I had a channel, negative divergence. I covered it at the time and said, look, the buyers are here, the buyers have stepped up. What does that do? It puts the pressure on this level here. So the fact that, you go top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. That's the kind of continuation, as you can see, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, and on through the channel. Once you see a break of that structure, and this works for directional channels, it works for, obviously these sideways channels as well, you're seeing the buyers put up the pressure here. So what we want to see is where do the buyers come to now? Do they step right up here? If we see support be found over here, if we see buyers move from here to here to here, that really puts the pressure for this thing to break out to the top side. And because this has been a channel, you could use this pretty well with a sort of little measured move. And we could sort of say, okay, should this break out, where may it sort of go to? And that takes you 95, 96, give or take, depending where you want to actually call the top of this channel, because obviously it chops and changes a little bit here. But 95, again, if we sort of look back over here, this takes us back up to the highs that we've seen back in 22, and was that pretty much as high as we've gone? No, of course not. Wow, jeez, what was going on? This isn't 20. But yeah, look, that measured move takes you pretty much up until September 22 highs. So there's a little bit of a confluence sort of lining up to sort of say that, hey, look, this thing springboards and breaks out the top side over here. This could really be putting a bit of pressure on silver to be doing much more should this thing break out to the top here. I mean, the RSI on the daily looks like it wants to go. We've seen this happen a number of times, obviously. You can see this through here. As I said, this is a 3-month channel, but we're seeing the buyers move up at the moment. There's a breakout attempt, sold back down. We saw it a couple of times here, and obviously ultimately it kept on with the range. So should we not see the buyers sort of here and boom comes back down here, then on with the channel we go. Should this, the pressure and the sort of the risk at the moment is that it takes out this 622 level. We're seeing gold absolutely rip, even at the moment now. It's, I think, putting in technical new high. So should this thing sort of break out to the top side here, I reckon this is going towards 95.50 conservatively to 95 to 96. I'd say that's your price target. Yeah. Well, through that zone there. All right, quickly just have a look over the news. I think we had too much overnight. Bit of China data yesterday, marginally better. Nothing really too much of note. Big one today is the RBA, of course, but as I said earlier, expectation is to hold flat. The eyes are on the sort of press conference afterwards at 3:30. And a bunch of PMI data in that, nothing sort of super exciting. We got CPI coming out for Euro over there, well down into those ranges and that at the moment. And then, of course, to start the sort of larger bits of data this week and that. So we've got ISM and JOLTS tonight. ISM slowing a little bit there. JOLTS still pretty flat, nothing too exciting. ADP looking to sort of tick up a little bit. And what are they thinking for NFP? We've got ISM on Friday there as well, the services. And then NFP looking for a little bit of a slowdown there as well. But again, fairly marginal sort of numbers, nothing sort of big shocker. So we'll see how that stuff sort of plays out. But I think, yeah, at least through this session, RBA is the one to watch. All right, that's it from me.